right. Biblically Centered Podcast, episode number 2. Pretty exciting. So, pod or podcast. I feel like this is, in my circles at least, some people refer to their podcast as the pod.
As the pod.
And then some as the podcast. So where do you feel like we fall in that?
I mean, I would probably lean more to podcast, but that's me.
Do any of your podcasts you listen to call them the pod?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay,
think
we'll
so.
stick with podcast for now. But again, thank you for everyone who listened to the first episode.
Yes.
I guess they say you have to start somewhere, and that's where we started. So
This is where we're starting.
For those of you who happen to come across it or see it on YouTube, made a mistake with the video quality. So again, I think it gives us something to look back on.
It does. I mean, they say if you're not embarrassed by the first time you ever do anything, then you waited too long to try.
Right.
Right?
Better to have imperfect action than perfect inaction.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yes.
So, but hopefully the video quality is a little bit better. We're still not using the best camera out there, so it's probably not amazing, but hopefully better at least than last week.
It's okay.
So, let's get started. Hit us with that mission statement.
Perfect. Biblically centered. We are here to equip your Christian family with knowledge and conversations so that you can live and defend your Christian faith.
That was beautiful.
Thanks.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit just about virtue in general, just that term.
Yes.
Because that's a term that we use a lot, but there's a lot of families and really a good portion of culture that just don't use virtue.
Right. So we've actually written 24 biblical family virtues. I think we kind of hinted that or teased it, hinted it. I mean, I think we said it, but
yeah, I think so.
We're officially announcing that to you. We wrote this. And so we now want to share those 24 virtues with you. We think they're really important as kind of a benchmark or kind of something that you can be working towards, not only in your actions and attitudes, but also in your heart. Because ultimately living a life dedicated to God is a life that's dedicated to him through our heart first. And then everything that comes out of that is from our heart. So, I mean, the verse, what springs out of our heart. So, but we're going to kind of talk about virtues because a year ago, we didn't have virtues. We had family values, which aren't bad.
And they were good.
They were fine. They were good.
They were good.
They were helpful. Why we kind of pivoted to virtue is I did a lot of reading last year.
I can attest to that, yes.
A lot.
I read some.
Yes. Ocean of books. I think I already said that, but yes, ocean of books. But what I really came across was just this idea of virtue and how it really kind of stands the test of time, and it can be measured and it can be really objectively thought about and written. Whereas I thought our values, while again, they were wonderful, values, I just kept seeing these are our family values, these are our family values, these are our family values. And then obviously with culture, this is what we value, this is what we value. It just was, and it is very subjective. And so I think for us, we just really wanted what are concrete things that we can be sharing with our children that really emphasize and play into that concreteness that we can actually learn of God.
Right. And it's all centered in God's word.
Yes.
Every virtue has scriptures that surround it. Yeah. And again, like we mentioned in the last episode, of just this process of trying to create a firm foundation for us and for our kids and our families that can kind of hold their own when they get out into the real world.
Yeah. So, and I think that what comes along with that is maybe the words we say are they really do mean a lot, but we've taken the time to kind of define all the words that we are going to use because linguistic theft is real.
There's a term. Show of hands for anyone who knows what linguistic theft is.
If not, look it up. It's very
I saw 2 hands.
eye-opening. Oh, perfect. Those were my hands.
Oh, shoot.
Sorry.
Okay.
Whoops. So we just kind of wanted a preference to going through these 24 virtues to talk about what is virtue, and again, why did we come across that term? Why are we using that term? And because I think that will better help you guys to understand like how we even chose them. It wasn't just like we value this. It was like, no, this is a virtue that we've seen over and over and over in the Bible, demonstrated in both the Old and New Testament. And how can we form a statement around that to where we can show this is what God is like, but then how can our lives emulate that?
Yeah.
So
good way of putting it.
So I just kind of wanted, I found this really interesting tool that was inspired by a book I read, which it's this graph on Google, or Google creates a graph for you of words used in publications. So you can type in any words you want and any time frame, and it kind of shows how frequently different words were used, and then it will kind of chart them out. Really fun.
In any material that's been published, is that right?
Yes. So I did that. I started at 1780, and I used...
Was there a reason you chose 1780?
I just wanted to kind of go back a good distance in time and kind of see how these words that I chose, which I'll tell you, kind of how they interplayed with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that kind of goes back to like when America was being founded and that kind of stuff of just like, what was life like back then when it was very kind of simple. Education was rooted in Christianity, founded on the Bible. Like that's what people studied, you know? So I picked that because it demonstrated what I'm about to say. So in 1780, the three words that I chose to kind of view in this graph were virtue, moral, and value. So in 1780, that's how they were lined up. Virtue on top, moral, and then value. That's the frequency they were used. So when people were writing fiction, nonfiction, they were writing about virtue. Moral was kind of in there, and then value was really not. And if you even go back to kind of like the 1828 Webster Dictionary, the original one, value is more just a word about like worth or what things are valued at. It's not really like values as we use it today didn't really exist. So then in 1810, there was a shift where value overcame virtue, and then moral was beneath that. Then by 1830, value had far surpassed moral and virtue, to where today, like, the chart is
That's
crazy.
a 50-year difference.
Yes, within 50 years. Bloop. It really kind of switched. And so now, bloop. There you go. You're going to get a lot of sound effects with me. And if you're not watching the video, you're going to miss out on some of my
hand gestures.
I talk with my hands a lot. That's why we got a mic like this, so I wouldn't be hitting one right here. And for notes,
free space.
Yeah, got to have the free space. So yeah, I just found that really interesting of, you know, when did we lose virtue? And so, yeah, like I just pointed out, within like 50 years. But kind of going back, I guess, to last episode almost a little bit, in high school, I studied worldview. I mean, it was a 4-year worldview course where we really dove into religion, how that influenced philosopher, how that influenced like train of thought and religion, and, you know, all the way out through music and art too.
Yeah, we did not study that in my high school.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Homeschool.
Did have a pretty sweet home ec class though.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, good.
Was in a chili cook-off in school.
Okay.
And lost because I used a packet.
Ugh.
Apparently that was a rule that no one told me. Now I don't use a packet.
You don't use a packet?
No.
So.
Packets are for losers. You just get on Google, search the ingredients in the packet, buy those ingredients, and then just do it yourself.
We're getting really off. But, I mean, packets are helpful. They're easy. It's fine.
Yeah.
And we would always jazz up a packet anyways. Okay.
Yeah.
Packets. Virtue.
Well, actually, can we go back to the chili topic real quick? I have one more point. I'm just kidding.
Okay. So, virtue goes all the way back, I mean, to classical writing, to kind of the classical era. And so Aristotle is really who kind of like, I guess, kicked it into overdrive, I guess. That's maybe
They didn't have overdrive back then.
Yeah, they didn't have that. So Aristotle defined virtue as a point between a deficiency or an excess. So it was a golden mean. So it wasn't necessarily like, here are two opposites and what's smack dab in the middle. It was more like, what is the right in the middle of that, if that makes sense. So it wasn't like the actual middle. It was like, it was between the two. Maybe you needed more of the excess, or maybe you needed more of the lack to make sure that you executed that virtue well. Mm-hmm. But it was definable and objectionable. So, and then going on, I mean, like, since then, churches have developed, like the 7 deadly sins, and then they developed, what are the opposite of the 7 deadly sins? So instead of abstaining from those, what can we pursue? Temperance, prudence, chastity, are some of those. And then a lot of people really are just like, just focus on the fruit of the Spirit. Or some people boil it down to, above all, our faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Right. So that's kind of like a crazy roundabout way. I mean, some other religions do have virtue, but it's not the same. It's more of like, yeah. So, but I wanted to go over kind of, so the definition of virtue, I guess, back in 1828, and kind of parallel that to how it is defined today, if you were to just go online and look up virtue. Because I think a lot of people are going to be like, but virtue just means this. Well.
So you have the original one?
Yes. So I have the original one. I mean, I'm sure it was defined before then, but this is just 1828 Webster's original dictionary, which I love. He includes a lot of Bible verses and references throughout it, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. But he so Webster defines virtue as a sense of strength from straining or stretching or extending. It's kind of the substance or quality. Moral goodness, the practice of moral duties, and the abstaining from vice, or a conformity of life and conversation to the moral law. And so it's the practice of moral duties merely from motives, or it can be from motives of convenience or of compulsion, but ultimately it's the practice of moral duties from sincere love to God and his laws, is virtue and religion. So virtue is nothing but voluntary obedience to truth.
Wow. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So that is that.
It is
so
not
today,
defined that way anymore.
Okay. What does it say today?
A beneficial quality or power of a thing.
Oh.
Just a thing.
Okay.
A commendable quality.
Oh.
So it's commendable.
Attaboy.
Let's see. Conformity to a standard of right.
But I guess they don't define what right is.
And then it says of a particular moral.
Oh, sure. So of your particular moral. Okay, gotcha.
Right. So it's a little bit more vague.
Right.
Definitely not as defined.
Yeah, for sure.
It's honestly kind of confusing reading through this. Really, what it's getting at.
It's like kind of there, but not. So yes, pursuing virtue is ultimately about our pursuit of Christ. So it's how we display that and how our behaviors reflect that. And so it's more so dealing with our heart and not just like outward things, because obviously outward is going to show what's in our inmost being. So sorry, all my notes. So yes, ultimately, virtues come from God and values come from within you. And so what we've kind of seen over this past year of really kind of formulating this is virtues come from God's law, which has been passed down through generations. So we have the Bible to refer to, which is generations upon generations of knowledge, and that they span and both agree the Old and New Testament.
Right.
Yeah. And so values are just things that people believe. So you can have your values and we'll have our values, and there you go. But again, kind of what I was saying, virtue works first on the inside and then spills outward through our behavior. Whereas everyone's values are just as valid as anyone else's. So if you have values, I'm not allowed to really say anything against your values because that's what you hold. And that's not what I hold, but I can't really express that to you.
Right.
Virtues do not change, and they are framed in the Bible and then developed through great texts. So as in the Bible is our source for them, and then everything else have just developed those from what the Bible had said. And values are placed within the individual and society rather than God. And so when you grew up, did you ever think, like, what should I do? When it came to, like, choices?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have the framework of virtues.
Yeah.
I didn't have that language, but I was very cognizant of what I viewed as right and wrong.
Yeah.
But it was more so from trying to live a life where I was abstaining from the wrong things.
Yeah.
Versus a life that was doing the right things.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So you were so your question was like, is this going to get me in trouble, or is this that kind of thing?
Yeah. And, I'm thankful for the way I was raised. I'm thankful for I guess, not to sound arrogant, but I'm thankful for the head on my shoulders.
Yeah.
Because truthfully, I did have a lot of freedom. But I'm thankful for the church I was raised in. I'm thankful for the friends that I had, because I did have a sense of accountability, and I did have a strong backing where I felt like I did have responsibility in my choices.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't really that defined. It was just like, okay, well, my youth pastor said I'm not supposed to have sex until I'm married, so I guess we can figure out what that means, what all is included in that. Like, it wasn't so much about being pure. It was about don't have sex.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it was just all about the things not to do, as opposed to virtues where it's like, these are the core of me that I'm living out, because this is what I believe.
Yeah.
That might have been a ramble, but I think there was something in there that made sense.
I think so. Well, I guess because I was going to kind of go into, instead of maybe, I guess, both, we were kind of how we perceived or thought about things was like, what should I do? What am I allowed to do? What would be right to do? And Aristotle said that is, in fact, the wrong question, which I think, looking back over our, like, growing up, we would have been like, yeah, that's probably not the best question or the best way we could have thought about things. Aristotle says we should ask, what kind of person do I want to be? And so I think, like, with our virtues and developing them, we want the answer to that question to be, for us and for our children, I want to be like Jesus Christ.
So is the "what would Jesus do" bracelet a good thing?
I mean, I guess. Or maybe
or is
because
it the wrong question?
Maybe the wrong question, or maybe it should be like, what did Jesus do? I don't know. Did you have one of those bracelets?
Yes, I did. I had a really, really cool one.
Nice.
And I won't get into that story. I just have a very distinct. So I thought, I was in 4th grade when I got.
Okay.
I think I got it either for my birthday or for Christmas, but I got a "What would Jesus do" bracelet, and it wasn't like the ones that are most common, where it's like the band that and they're all different colors. This one was like a rope, and it had these silver, like square beads on it with the letters engraved into them.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought I was so cool.
Took it up a notch.
And there was a girl who sat in front of me in science in 4th grade. And I remember when she looked at my bracelet and asked about it. And then I was like, this is my time.
And did that help you growing up?
I mean, she and I never dated, so I guess not.
Did that provide you with what you needed to live and defend your faith?
I don't think so. And I think just, it's a little bit of the wrong question.
Right.
Which I think is what we're discovering. Because it's not, like you said, it's not what should I do, it's who should I be.
Right.
And
in the context of Jesus.
Right.
Right.
And if we can figure that out, who we are, and we can find confidence in these virtues. And again, like I'll use the term probably foundation at least 5 times every episode. But if I have that foundation, then I can step out confidently as who I am, knowing that these are kind of my backing, and then my decision making will be supported not by these virtues, but also I'll have God's word in me.
Yes.
Which is important for anyone in navigating the world. Yeah.
So there'll be kind of guidelines. And I love that as virtues. And I think even as we developed these for our family, we knew they're going to be for our children, because we want to kind of have like something to be able to definitively point to, like, these are our objective biblical virtues. This is why we do the things we do, or this is why we ask you to share, or this is why we ask you to be generous, because it says so right here. And so we've defined them all, and we've defined them within God's word from virtues that, again, we've found in the overarching story of God, which runs from Genesis to Revelation. And so it's more so we wanted something to be able to show our kids and not just be like, the Bible says so, and hope that they trust us with that statement, which it's not a bad sentiment to say that, but I think it challenges us to really like, okay, why are we saying that? And why do we really believe that? And we're really digging into that.
Yep.
So it's for our children, but then B, I think as virtues, they overextend not only from what a child should do, but also what an adult should do. So it's also like, these are our family virtues. So I think we also kind of wanted, not that, I mean, we are the parents, so we are parenting our children, but we wanted to give them sort of that like the opportunity to know that their voice does matter. And so if they don't see us operating by those virtues, they're able to kind of speak to that. So, if they're saying we aren't being compassionate, I want to be convicted of that. And I think it's okay. Like, that's okay for our children to be able to do. 'Cause I want them to know, like, I'm listening, and not like, I'm going to listen to everything you say. But if they can point it out on the virtues that we've defined, then I want to be able to be convicted of that so that I can continue being more like Christ each and every single day, because I know that I need them just as much as our kids do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hopefully that was helpful. I know, this is a topic that has a lot of different facets to it, which we'll be exploring. And we'll, go deeper into some of this stuff as time goes on in the upcoming episodes. So for the next episode, we're going to be, are we jumping into the first virtue? Are we jumping in the first category?
I think we're going to do categories. So there are 24 virtues, and those are broken up into 6 categories. And so I think what we're going to kind of do, we'll do a virtue a week. However, like every month, there will be like a preference category bonus kind of episode to kind of frame like, why are these together? Because they all work together. I mean, all 24 work. And honestly, if you just took the first virtue and lived that virtue, I think the rest would define themselves. But again, we want to make this like as clear cut as possible. So we've defined 24. We could have kept going, but I think 24 is manageable. So yes, it'll be once a week for virtue, but then every month there'll kind of be like an introductory, like this is what category we're venturing into and why that matters.
Cool. Any last words?
Chili packets are fine.
Wow. Thank you guys for listening. And we will, people say we'll see you next time. I think that's pretty hard to do. But you'll see us next time.
Yep.
So have a good one.
Thanks.